Zaina woke up before the sun rose, her heart full of hope and nerves. It was her baby girl's first birthday, and even though money was tight, she was determined to make it special. In their small but cozy home in Kumasi, Ghana, Zaina hung balloons in soft pink and yellow. She had baked a small vanilla cake the night before, carefully icing it with her daughter's name, Amina. It wasn't much, but it was made with love. She even made a little paper crown for Amina, who sat in her high chair clapping her tiny hands, unaware of the weight of the day. Zaina had invited a few neighbours and cousins. There were laughter and warm plates of jollof rice. Kids ran around the courtyard chasing bubbles. It was beautiful, simple, and filled with joy, except for one thing. Oena, her fiancé and Amina's father, hadn't shown up. He hadn't called, hadn't even sent a message. All day, Zaina kept checking her phone. Her smile stayed on, but her eyes kept searching the gate, hoping he'd walk in with that familiar grin and maybe a little gift. But as the sun began to set and the guests slowly left, reality hit harder. She sat beside Amina, watching her daughter smear icing across her cheeks. A tear slipped down Zaina's face, but she quickly wiped it away. Today was supposed to be about joy. Still, something inside her whispered, this day may not have gone as planned, but it might be the start of something bigger. The morning after Amina's birthday, Zaina woke up with a heavy heart. Her phone was still silent. No missed calls, no texts, nothing from Oena. She stared at the screen, hoping, even begging in her mind, that a message would come through. Maybe something had happened. Maybe he got sick. Maybe there was an emergency. She told herself anything to quiet the ache inside her chest. But as the hours passed, the silence only got louder. She sent him another message. Where are you? You missed your daughter's birthday. Then another. At least let me know you're okay. But the blue ticks came and went, and still no reply. She called. Twice. 3 times. Voicemail every time. By evening, he finally walked through the door. No apology, no flowers, not even a toy for Amina. Just a tired look and a half-hearted hug. I'm sorry, he said casually. Work emergency. I had to rush to Accra. My boss needed me. His voice was calm, like nothing was wrong. Zaina stood there, holding her baby, her mind racing. You couldn't even send a message? She asked, her voice trembling. Oena just shrugged, already reaching for the remote. You know how stressful my job is, he said, not looking at her. Something about the way he spoke didn't sit right. Later that night, while rocking Amina to sleep, Zaina scrolled through her phone, just out of habit. That's when her heart stopped. A friend had posted photos on social media, a birthday party in Accra, but not for Amina. There he was, Oena, laughing with friends, holding a drink, dancing, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. The caption read, Oena turned up big time last night. The timestamp matched the night of Amina's birthday. Zaina stared at the photo, her chest tight, her fingers shook. It felt like the ground beneath her was giving way. She wasn't just hurt, she was betrayed. All this time she had been defending him in her mind, making excuses, believing he had a reason. But now the truth was staring her in the face. He lied. He chose fun over family, a party over his daughter. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not just from sadness but from anger. She had given so much to this man, her time, her love, her trust. And this is how he repaid her? With silence and lies. That night she didn't sleep. She held Amina close, kissed her tiny forehead and whispered, you deserved better, baby girl. Deep down, Zaina knew something had shifted. This wasn't just about one missed birthday. This was the moment the mask fell off, and she finally saw Oena for who he really was. Zaina sat on the edge of her bed, the soft hum of the fan filling the silence. Amina slept peacefully beside her, curled up like a little angel. But Zaina's heart was loud with memories. Memories she had tried to push away, now flooding back like a wave. She thought about how it all began. She met Oena during her second year at university. He was charming, funny, full of dreams. He would walk her to class, bring her roasted groundnuts during study breaks, and talk about their future like it was already written. Back then, she believed every word. He said he wanted a life with her, marriage, children, success, and she wanted that too. So when she got that scholarship to study abroad, she hesitated. It was a huge opportunity, her dream. But Oena had just lost his job. He looked at her with tired eyes and said, if you leave now, I'll lose you. I need you. And just like that, she gave it up, for love. She told herself they'd build something great together, right there in Ghana, that her dreams could wait. She supported him through his struggle. When he couldn't find work, she sold her laptop to help with rent. She stayed up late editing his CV, writing cover letters. She cheered him on through rejection after rejection. Even when people whispered, "She's doing too much," she ignored them. She believed in him. She believed in them. But somewhere along the line, things changed. The man who once held her hand so tightly now barely looked her in the eyes. He stopped saying thank you, stopped asking how her day was, stopped trying. Zaina would cook, clean, care for Oena, and still find herself alone at night, waiting for a man who always had something important to do. And yet, she stayed. She stayed because of their history, because she hoped the old Oena would return, because she didn't want her daughter to grow up in a broken home. But now, with each lie, each cold silence, she could see the truth more clearly. This wasn't love anymore, at least not the kind that should hold a family together. Zaina looked down at Oena, who stirred in her sleep and reached out a tiny hand to touch her mother's arm. That small gesture, that little hand, it reminded Zaina of what real love looked like. Pure, present, unconditional. Oena had stopped showing up, emotionally, physically, spiritually. But her baby girl, she showed up every single day with her laughter, her tiny hugs, her innocent trust. Zaina's eyes welled up with tears, not from pain this time, but from clarity. She was tired of pretending, tired of carrying it all alone. Love wasn't meant to feel this lonely. She had given everything, and now, finally, she was starting to realize it was time to start giving some of that love back to herself. Zaina waited until Oena had fallen asleep before she finally spoke. Oena was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. The same man who had missed their daughter's first birthday, the same man who lied to her face. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Oena didn't even look up. "Can it wait?" "I'm tired." "No," she replied, firmer this time. "It can't wait. I saw the pictures, Oena. You weren't at any work emergency. You were at a party in Accra. On Omena's birthday." He paused for a moment, then set the phone down slowly. "So you're spying on me now?" Zaina blinked, stunned. "Spying? You're seriously turning this on me?" He shrugged. "Zaina, you always make everything a big deal. You're too emotional. I just needed a break. That's all." Her chest tightened. "A break? From what? From your own child? From being a father for one day?" He rolled his eyes. "Don't start. I'm under a lot of pressure. Work has been stressful. Sometimes I just need space." Zaina stared at him, almost in disbelief. "So your way of dealing with stress is to disappear and go party while I stay home and carry everything, alone?" He didn't answer, just leaned back on the couch like the conversation was boring him. And that was the moment something inside her cracked open, not from pain, but from realization. She had fought so hard to keep them together. She had blamed herself when things went wrong. She had lowered her expectations, bit her tongue, smiled through disappointment, again and again. But now she was done. Not angry, not shouting, just done. Zaina took a slow breath. "You didn't just miss her birthday, Oena. You showed me who you are. And I can't unsee it." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic." "No," she said, her voice calm. "I'm finally seeing things clearly." There was silence between them, a cold, quiet space where love used to live. She stood up, walked over to the crib, and gently pulled a blanket over Omena's tiny feet. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, strong and still, letting the truth settle like dust after a storm. Oena mumbled something under his breath and picked up his phone again, already retreating into the world where she didn't matter. But Zaina didn't care anymore. That night, her heart didn't break. It woke up. And in that awakening, she understood. This wasn't the life she wanted. Not for her, not for her daughter. Something had shifted deep inside her, and there was no going back. The old Zaina would have begged, pleaded, tried harder, but that Zaina was gone. This one was ready to rise. The wedding was supposed to be in 3 weeks. Everything was already moving. Invitations had been sent out. Her aunties in Lagos had already picked their outfits. The seamstress had done the final fitting for Zaina's dress just the week before. Even Oena had a tiny lace dress, white with little gold bows. The house was full of whispers, phone calls, fabric, and flowers. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but inside Zaina, nothing felt right. Every morning she woke up with a tight feeling in her chest. She tried to shake it off, told herself to focus on the to-do list, smiled when her mother said, "You're going to be such a beautiful bride," nodded when people congratulated her. But at night, lying in bed with Oena tucked under her arm, her mind raced. She kept thinking about that birthday, about the lies, about the way Oena had looked at her, like she was a problem, not a partner. He hadn't apologized, not really. He hadn't changed. In fact, he was acting like everything was fine, like missing his daughter's first birthday was just a small mistake, like Zaina should just move on. And for a while, she almost convinced herself to do just that. Until one morning, Zaina walked into her bedroom and saw the wedding gown hanging by the window. The sunlight hit it gently, making the beads shimmer. It was beautiful, everything she had dreamed of as a little girl. But all she could think was, this dress deserves joy, not fear, not pretending. She sat down on the bed, looking at the gown, then at the little shoes beside it, Oena's. That's when the tears came, not loud or dramatic, but slow and steady. Silent tears that carried months of pain, disappointment, and truth. Zaina whispered to herself, "I can't do this. I won't marry someone who couldn't show up for his own child." She felt a strange calm come over her, like her soul had finally caught up with what her heart already knew. It wasn't about the guests, or the money spent, or what people would say. It was about what she deserved, what Oena deserved. A home filled with love, not excuses. A partner who showed up, not one she had to beg. Later that day, she called her mother, her aunt, and the event planner. Her voice didn't shake. "There won't be a wedding," she said simply. "I've made my decision." People were shocked. Some cried. Some tried to talk her out of it. But Zaina stood firm. She had spent too long putting others first. This time, she was choosing herself, her peace, her daughter. The dress stayed hanging by the window for days after, but it didn't feel sad. It felt like freedom, because walking away wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing she had ever done. Zaina packed her bags slowly, one item at a time. It wasn't just clothes she was folding. It was memories, mistakes, and a version of herself she was finally ready to leave behind. The house was quiet except for Oena's soft giggles as she played with a spoon on the floor. Zaina looked at her and smiled. That little laugh gave her strength. She had called her aunt in Lagos the day after cancelling the wedding. "I need a fresh start," she had said softly. Her aunt didn't ask questions. She simply replied, "Come home, my dear. There's a room waiting for you." When Oena found out she was leaving, he showed up at the house, angry and loud. "So you're just going to throw everything away?" he shouted. "After all the plans, after everything I've done for you?" Zaina stood still, Oena in her arms, her voice calm. "What exactly did you do for me, Oena? Missed your daughter's birthday? Lied to me? Disrespected me? You stopped showing up a long time ago." He rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic. Every couple has problems. You're breaking this family for nothing." She took a deep breath. "I'm not breaking anything. I'm saving myself. And I'm saving my daughter from growing up thinking this is what love looks like." Oena tried to guilt trip her, bringing up the money he had spent, the wedding plans, how people would talk, but none of it touched her anymore. His words used to make her question herself, cry at night, stay silent, but not this time. This time she knew her worth. The bus ride to Lagos was long, but peaceful. Zaina watched the trees blur past the window, her baby asleep on her lap. Her heart felt lighter with every mile between her and Kumasi. She didn't know what waited for her in Lagos, but she knew what she was leaving behind, and that was enough. Her aunt welcomed her with warm hugs and a hot plate of rice and stew. The house was small, but filled with love. That night, Zaina sat by the window with a notebook and pen. She began to write, not a letter to Oena, not a diary entry, but a plan for herself, for her healing, for her future. She started applying for jobs. She looked into starting a blog for young mothers. She took walks with Oena, cooked new meals, laughed more, slept better. Slowly, piece by piece, Zaina was rebuilding. Oena kept calling, sending long texts full of blame and guilt, but she didn't answer. She had nothing left to say. She was done chasing someone who couldn't see her value, done begging to be loved the right way. Zaina wasn't just starting over, she was breaking the chains. And with every step forward, she was becoming the woman she was always meant to be. Zaina sat at the small desk in her aunt's living room, typing with one hand and rocking Oena with the other. Her heart was still healing, but something inside her had shifted. She was no longer asking, "Why me?" Instead, she was asking, "What now? One night, after putting Oena to sleep, she opened her laptop and started writing. Not to vent, not to complain, but to share. She wrote about the birthday Oena missed, about how it felt to love someone who kept choosing everything but you, about walking away from a wedding everyone expected to happen. She called the blog Mama Rising. Simple, honest, raw. She posted without expecting much, but within days, comments started coming in, first from Ghana, then from Nigeria, then from women all the way in Kenya. I felt this in my bones. You just wrote my story. Thank you for saying what so many of us are afraid to admit. Zaina couldn't believe it. Her pain had turned into something powerful. Connection. She kept writing every week. She shared the hard days and the good ones. The moments when she cried in the shower, and the ones when Omena's tiny laugh made everything feel okay again. Soon, she started getting invited to speak on podcasts and women's panels. A parenting magazine in Kenya asked to feature her story. Brands began reaching out, offering to collaborate, to sponsor her content. But Zaina only said yes to the ones that aligned with her values. If it doesn't help a mother feel seen or supported, I'm not interested, she told them. With the little savings she had, and a small grant from a women's empowerment group, she opened her first daycare centre in Lagos. It was called Little Light Haven. Not fancy, but full of warmth. Every wall had colours. Every caregiver had training and kindness. Every child was treated like a blessing. Parents started lining up, not just because of the daycare, but because of her story. They trusted her. They saw themselves in her. And Zaina, she was finally living again, laughing, dreaming, building something real. She wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. She was just being her, strong, soft, smart, healing. The woman who once cried quietly in a small bedroom in Kumasi was now speaking on stages in Lagos, not as a victim, not as the girl who got left behind, but as a voice, a guide, a mother who rose. One evening, as the sun set and her daycare emptied out, Zaina sat on the front steps, holding Oena in her lap. The little girl clapped her hands and shouted, "Mama happy?" Zaina smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "Mama is happy. Mama is finally home." Oena never thought Zaina would actually leave. He assumed it was just a phase, a bit of drama, something she'd move past after a few days of silence. But the silence stretched. Days became weeks, then months, and the wedding that never happened slowly became old news to everyone except him. At first, he tried to ignore the emptiness. He went out more, drank more, laughed louder, but it all felt fake. His friends, the ones who used to hype him up, stopped calling once they realized Zaina was really gone, and so was the calm, stable life she gave him. The job that had once been his excuse for everything started slipping too. Missed deadlines, late arrivals, attitude problems. His manager gave him one warning, then another. By the third, it was over. Oena lost his job just 6 months after Zaina left. For the first time, he sat alone in his apartment with no distractions, no money coming in, and no one to blame but himself. He scrolled through Instagram and saw Zaina smiling in a bright yellow dress, standing in front of her daycare with Oena on her hip. She looked peaceful, fulfilled, glowing. He didn't recognize her anymore, and that made him angry. He called her. She didn't answer. He texted her long paragraphs full of, "I miss you," and "I made a mistake." He tried to remind her of the good times, of how they used to dream together, but Zaina didn't respond right away. She waited, prayed, and sat with her feelings. When she finally replied, it wasn't cruel or cold. It was clear. "Oena, I truly hope you find your way, but I've found mine. I don't hate you. I just learned I can't grow with someone who kept shrinking me. Thank you for teaching me what not to accept." He stared at the message for a long time, not knowing what to say. He had expected anger, tears, maybe even a little bit of begging, but not this, not calm, not confidence, not closure. Zaina wasn't bitter. She'd simply outgrown him. He remembered the old days when she would wait up for him, worry over him, fight for him. Now she didn't chase or cry. She simply moved on. And Oena? He stayed exactly where he was, stuck. He tried to rebuild his life, but something was missing. The woman who had stood by him when he had nothing was now a rising light, far out of reach. His old friends had moved on. The job offers never came. Slowly, the world stopped orbiting around him. This wasn't revenge, this was consequence. Zaina didn't want him back, not out of pride, but out of peace. She had found something better than romance. She had found herself. And Oena? He finally realized that losing Zaina wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the start of his own fall. The sun was soft and golden that morning in Abuja. The garden was already buzzing with quiet excitement. White and lavender balloons floated in the air. Bright flowers lined the walkway. A small bouncy castle stood in one corner, and a table covered in glittery cupcakes stood in the other. Laughter spilled through the air like music. Today was Amina's 3rd birthday, and this time it wasn't just a celebration. It was a symbol of everything Zaina had overcome. Zaina stood near the entrance, dressed in a flowing lilac dress that danced with the breeze. Her smile was wide, her eyes shining with peace. She had planned every detail of this day herself, from the princess crown on Amina's curls to the handwritten thank you notes tied to the party bag. Nothing was too big or too small for her baby girl, because this was more than a party. It was a promise, a new chapter, a joyful memory to replace the one that had once broken her heart. 2 years ago, Zaina had stood alone on Amina's 1st birthday, wondering how to explain absence to a baby. Now, the only thing surrounding them was presence. Real, loving, unwavering presence. Family, friends, women from her blog community, even parents from her daycare in Lagos had flown in. Her tribe had grown, and they had all shown up. As Amina ran through bubbles, giggling and shouting, Zaina knelt beside her and whispered, "This is what love feels like, my baby. Safe, full, loud, with laughter." Amina nodded, though she barely understood the depth of those words. But she could feel it, in the way arms lifted her, in the way people clapped when she danced, in the way her mama looked at her like she was magic. In a quiet corner, someone stood watching. Oena. He had come alone. He wasn't invited, but someone told him about the party, and he showed up, standing behind the fence like a stranger. He looked older, thinner. Life had clearly humbled him. He held a small gift bag, unsure if he should walk closer, but he didn't. He just stood there, staring at the woman he once thought would always be waiting for him. Zaina saw him. Their eyes met for a brief second, but she didn't flinch. She didn't feel anger or pain or even pity. She just smiled softly, then turned back to her daughter. Oena was no longer the center of her story. He was a footnote now, watching her rise from the shadows he once cast. As the cake was brought out, 3 tiers of purple and gold, with Queen Amina written in icing, Zaina carried her daughter to the table. Everyone sang. The candles flickered. "Make a wish," Zaina whispered. Amina shut her eyes tight and blew them out. Zaina had already made hers, and it had come true. A birthday full of love, no lies, no tears, just laughter, healing, and light. The kind of day they both deserved. The day was warm and full of joy. Not loud, not overdone, just right. Zaina stood in front of a small garden filled with white roses, close friends, and family. She wore a soft cream dress, simple but elegant, with Amina standing proudly beside her in a matching outfit. This was the wedding that truly mattered, not the one she once planned in sadness, but the one she now stepped into with peace. The man standing across from her wasn't flashy. He didn't make big promises. He just showed up, every single day. His name was Tunde. He loved gently, spoke honestly, and never once treated Amina like anything less than his own child. From the very start, he didn't just love Zaina. He made space for her story, her scars, and her dreams. Amina called him Papa T, and he never corrected her. He read her bedtime stories, braided her hair when Zaina was tired, and danced with her in the kitchen like they had always been a family. As they exchanged vows, Zaina felt no fear, only gratitude. She had once thought her life was falling apart, but really, it was falling into place. She had been redirected, protected, given the chance to choose better. There were no tears this time, only laughter, music, and joy that came from real love. Zaina's story wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It had become a light for others. Proof that being left behind doesn't mean you're not enough. Sometimes it means you were being saved for something far more beautiful.